This interview, conducted with Joaquin Murrieta by Dr. Helen Ingram and Wendy, Gwynn, Laird Benner, took place May 2010.
Well, I got involved thanks to Wendy Laird. I was doing beginning my PhD in Tucson and looking at natural resource studies with emphasis on economics, management, and policy at the School of Natural Resources. So I needed a job. I needed to stay in Tucson. My grant from Mexico didn't come through, so that's how I knew about the Sonoran Institute through another friend of mine in Tucson, and that was my first encounter with Wendy. So that's how I pretty much got started. At that time, the Sonoran Institute was organizing one of the second International Sonoran Desert Alliance conference in Caborca. And that's when I started meeting all these wonderful people of binational collaboration through the Sonoran Institute and as well to the beginning of the International Sonoran Desert Alliance. Before that, I was working at the state government of Sonora, pretty much on environmental issues regarding tourism and conservation as well as agriculture, management, that type of thing. So from the state government, I went to Tucson to study my master's and then my PhD.
And Joaquin, where were you born, and why even go into this study?
Why the love of the desert, if that's what it is?
I was born, well, before that, I think, believe it or not, I think the Green Revolution. Because if it wasn't from the Green Revolution, I wouldn't exist. My grandfather and my mother and father were an ejido family, and they got granted some land thanks to the agrarian reform in Mexico. So the Yaqui Valley was just opening in the 1940s with my grandparents, and so that's the story of my family. Of course, I was born 20-some years after that, but I come from an ejido family in the southern Sonora in Obregon, and I got interested in agriculture because of my family background. And there's a very interesting story there. I was helping one summer my grandfather to harvest cotton. So my grandfather told me, hey, Joaquin, go and gather some people because tomorrow we're going to start picking up the cotton. Okay, easy task. So I was just learning how to drive. I was 16 or 17. So I was with this old beat-up pickup and went to the nearest town. And my grandfather told me to scream the price of the kilo of the cotton, probably like a peso or a peso 25 cents for the kilo. So I started screaming about 1 peso, a peso 20, then I reached 125, so I got like 10 people on board. And then suddenly this brand new Chevy pickup just showed up, and he screamed 127, and everybody jumped out of the car. And I was left with nobody in my truck, just because of 2 cents of a difference on the price. And it's like, oh my God. So I was alone, and nobody was in the town. Everybody left to pick up cotton. And no cell phones at that time, no nothing. So I returned to my grandfather's farm and say, hey, that I couldn't gather anybody. And then this big rich guy showed up screaming 127, so everybody went to him. So that's where I learned the value of economics and natural resources, that 2 cents make a huge of a difference, and that people make decisions on that. So I was there, 17-year-old guy that was just trying to decide where to go after high school, blah, blah, blah. So I did study agronomy. relation, I went to study economics, agricultural economics in Tucson. Then, when I was in school at the university, my God, I remember a lot of stuff. I'll be quick. I went to, my nickname at the university in Hermosillo was the hippie, because I was on a very conservative school studying agronomy in Sonora. And so I went with shorts and sandals and t-shirts, and everybody was wearing boots and the Sonoran style of long sleeve shirts and hats. And so I was the only guy with shorts at the agricultural school at the university. So honoring that name of the hippie, I went to study organic farming, among all things, in Santa Cruz, California. So that studies in Santa Cruz changed my whole perspective of agriculture, the agroecology program, as they call it still. That was at the farm, which is still operating in the Santa Cruz University in California. So there I was living on a teepee, eating what I grow, and exchanging vegetables for clothes, or vegetables for music, or vegetables for beer in this program at the university. So I came back to Mexico to finish my bachelor's with a totally mindset change, to begin an organic farm ecology club at my university. So that's how I started with this collaboration, different types of thinking, way before I went to Tucson. I graduated, I finished, I concentrated more on small-scale farming instead of the Green Revolution, big-scale pesticide thing. And but always thinking of the well-being of the communities and well-being of the people that actually is working the land, and to make a better living and a better management of nature, if it's possible. So because of those 2 cents difference of price, because of the hippie style of studying in agriculture school in Hermosillo, but also because of the opportunities in the Santa Cruz, California, and those opportunities came thanks to the American Friends Service Committee that I was part of. There was this Quaker family in Hermosillo that I became friends, and they showed me another totally different. And so thanks to the Quakers, I knew about this school, and I knew about all kinds of connections to the world. Thanks to the Quakers, the world came to me. Instead of me discovering the world was coming home, because we were part of this community. And since I was 15, 16, I started organizing community efforts and exchanges and work camps with the Quaker international community. So that's how I landed in Tucson after all that. And but always with an emphasis of people, community, conservation, nature, well-being type of studies, I guess.
Who was your advisor at U of A? Who brought you here?
My advisor was a very weird advisor. It's Terry Daniel is his name.
I remember Terry Daniels. He's a psychologist.
Yeah, he was in psychology. It was interesting because I applied like 2 or 3 times to my PhD program at the U of A. First time I was rejected. I don't know why. Second time they were trying to send me to anthropology, and I keep telling them, no, I don't want to study anthropology. I want to be at the School of Natural Resources. But you always talk about people, you always talk about community, you always talk about human well-being, so you should be in anthropology. No. You guys are studying turtles and jaguars and all kinds of things. My species to study is the humans, the human behavior towards nature. I mean, what's the difference between animals and humans? I mean, we behave some way, we behave another way. Supposedly we are more rational, but I don't know. That's when Terry Daniel becomes important. So Terry Daniel said, Joaquin, you're talking about perception. You're talking about human behavior and the relation to nature and how humans react to the stimuli of nature. Oh my God, that's what I'm talking about. So thanks to Terry Daniel, he adopted me at the School of Natural Resources with a minor in anthropology. So my committee was Terry Daniel and Bill Shaw and Bill Halverson.
Talked to Bill yesterday. Talked to Bill Shaw yesterday.
Yeah, Bill Shaw and Bill Halverson, they were great people to work with. Bill Halverson was also one of the first people I heard about Sonoran Institute, and we're still in contact with all of them. And from anthropology was also Tom McGuire.
Tom McGuire and I did a project one time.
Yeah. So those four guys were the ones that influenced my PhD. And I ended up looking at perception of the environment for my dissertation on how different communities perceive, behave, and take decisions of the same piece of land. So I was interested on the Tohono O'odham people, the Mexican people, and the U.S. people, looking at the Pinacates and how these three different cultural populations relate to that system, to that biosphere reserve. So that process was the one who presented to me the Sonoran Institute. And within that, the International Sonoran Desert Alliance. And that's how I started to know, besides Shaw and Halverson and McGuire, to put faces on the landscape, like Joaquin, for example, like Lorraine Eiler, like Wendy Laird, like Ezequiel Escurra, and how those people had showed me a passion for the land and a passion for the people that live on the land. For me, that was very important. The relation of the people living in the Sonoran Desert and the newcomers like us, or not newcomers, or the people that were concerned or they share the same values to do something for the Sonoran Desert. Long answer, I guess.
No, actually, it's you're the first person who's told us that the people who've lived here was part of what brought them in. Everybody else has talked about the resource, the beauty of it, the specialness of place. So I'm really happy that we asked you that question. That's great.
And it's funny because in anthropology, I'm not going to remember his name. But anyway, I always ask, what about the people? That was my main question. Whenever we talk about natural resources, all that is okay. But what about the people that lives in there? What's going to happen to them? What's the relation to them? How do they react? How will they behave if this or that happens? And so that question became quite famous and attached to myself. What about the people? So anyway, I still with that trend, with that question, what about the people in relation to natural resources?
So one of the areas that we're really interested in is the idea of institutions and people, and what's the role and importance of either or both. And I know that you're very involved in the Upper Gulf now. You obviously had set up the Ruta de Maya and had worked with the Alliance after my departure from Sonoran Institute.
Yeah.
Could you speak a little bit about sort of institutions and how those work? And I know that in talking to Francisco, you guys are working on a fairly large and aggressive institutional structure in the Upper Gulf. But there are key players there. So.
Yeah. Again, one of my thinking, I guess, with the creation of La Ruta de Sonora. With the Sonoran Institute, and also continuing the relationship with the International Sonoran Desert Alliance, thanks to you, Wendy, was that attachment to the place. And from one side, yes, the beauty of nature, but from the other side, yes, the attachment of people to that nature. Like to talk with Joaquin in one side of the fence, and to talk with, I'm not going to remember names, Felix, I guess, from the other side of the fence with the Tohono Nation, as well as to talk with Colin Soto from the Cucapa, and Doña Inocencia as well, and understanding their attachment to the place through either to the Colorado River or through the heartland of the core of the Sonoran Desert, like the Tohono Nation. It always, and also some other people that live in Ajo, that live in Tucson, that live in Caborca, in Puerto Peñasco, Hermosillo. It always intrigued me that people got together because they want to have a better life, a better quality of life, but also a better understanding of the relationship of humans and nature. So institutions, in a way, for me, whether they are official institutions like government agencies and or organizations like ISDA, like our NGOs, they bring some level of a forum, some level of authority, some level of communication capacity, and some level of networking. So the institutions become important if we are able to balance the attachment to the place, the attachment to nature, but also the realities that sometimes we need to empower those people that are attached. Sometimes we also need to work and empower the government to assist these people or to change the way programs are. I need to open the door, wait. Institutions that, or government that also need a change in the way they manage people and manage land. So institutions become important because, for me, several things. It creates a common pool or a common table to talk about issues. And we've been lucky, I think, that these forums are pretty open. There are forums either to discuss ideas, which we're not lacking ideas. There's always great ideas. But the institutions also are the ones that kind of guide those ideas and make them work. Otherwise, it becomes sometimes a wonderful communication, which is good. But if we want to have results, sometimes there is the formal institutions like government and NGOs, but also the informal institutions, the gathering, the networking that happens thanks to those institutions. If it wasn't for Sonoran Institute or for ISDA, I wouldn't be able to meet all these people that are wonderful people. Otherwise, it becomes harder to meet those key players in the Sonoran Desert. Like if it was me, by myself trying to do something, it's hard to start connecting all the dots. But if I discover ISDA, for example, oh my God, this great organization that is already here, that is talking with people and that is doing this. And at the same time, I discovered CEDO, which is also looking at relationship with marine and desert environments and people. So two great connections right there that are working with people. And so for me, the institutions become very relevant if we are true to the meaning of people and the environment.
Do you see any distinction between government agencies and non-governmental organizations as kinds of institutions through which to provide forums? Yeah.
I see a great difference. One is the authority, which is the government, and it's always thinking on a box, and it's always thinking, or it's always acting within a bureaucracy that they don't want to change. So they want to follow their own rules. This is our box, this is our bureaucracy, this is our law, this is the thing we need to follow. And if nothing changed, they're very happy. They're great. And that's why institutions are so hard to change sometimes. Because we have our own bureaucracy, we have our own way of working. So that's the government side. And it also needs help, a lot of help. And from the other hand, the nonprofit or civil institutions, civil society organizations, they have a lot more freedom of thinking. It's the flowing of ideas, the beauty of interaction, of the freedom of thinking, I guess. So if we understand both situations, I think it's a great balance. And sometimes within the government there is people that also want to do changes in the system. So those are the people that we need to identify as well. So it's kind of the working the top-down authority approach, but also the bottom-up. And what is it? Where do they meet? Because they both need each other. One is to challenge authority, which is the NGO, and the other one is to put authority, I guess, in the work we're doing. Because otherwise, sometimes we do need the law, sometimes we don't need it. But in a lot of things we do need the government not to prove, but to make sure of a continuity, or to make sure that the legal system is in place, or to make sure that a protected area will continue to be protected, that type of authority. But like a good case of the Pinacate Biosphere and Upper Gulf, a lot of the things that are happening now is because the role of the NGO world within those biosphere reserves. So it's the balance between the top-down and the bottom-up approaches that we as a non-profit, I'm also looking for that balance. And the third one that I will bring in is the private sector. We have the authority of government, we have the non-profit world, and lately I've been fascinated with bringing the private sector into the table as well. Private sector meaning industry, meaning mining, fishing, tourism, because they are the ones that are affecting the most the natural resources. It's not the community itself. It's the private sector or the economy of different regions.
Can you put this in the context of something you're working on now with the Colorado River? Is this a good example of putting these things together? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, one of the latest things things I did with the Sonoran Institute was that was a fascinating thing. That was in relation with tourism.
Okay.
So I'll give you a little of the scale up of things. With the Sonoran Institute, thanks to the Sonoran Institute, ISDA was created. Because of ISDA, we were able to have community input to look at economic activities or sustainable economic activities with people in mind. Because of that, La Ruta de Sonora was created. Because of La Ruta de Sonora, which the scale is incrementing every time I mention another organization. So Sonoran Institute, International Sonoran Desert Alliance, thanks to that, La Ruta de Sonora was created. Thanks to that, we start touching upon different communities that are related with tourism and conservation. So how do we bring together two sectors? One is the community-based tourism, and the other one is the tourism sector. And because of La Ruta de Sonora, then we got partnering with the National Geographic, which became an international approach to tourism. So because of all those things, National Geographic got interested in something that is a trend right now internationally, which is the geotourism, which is tourism that sustain and enhance the character of a place and the environment, the people, the cuisine, the place. So every time we keep incrementing the scale. Mm-hmm. So the last thing we did is create a model of community participation with National Geographic to develop a strategy of community-based mapping. And what is it that the community has or think they have as the character of place of the Sonoran Desert, for example?
Where exactly did this mapping happen?
It happened in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona, anything between south of Phoenix all the way to Sonora.
Okay.
To Alamos, Sonora. So that region was the first community-based geotourism map ever done in the world. So because of that strategy, we influenced Peru, Guatemala, the U.S., Canada with that level of thinking, and the whole Gulf of California. So, but that's not. Well, the other thing that happens as we were doing that, because we had government, we have National Geographic, we have people. So the Sonoran Institute, all we're thinking was, okay, we have all these partners, and we have all these assets as the biosphere reserves, like the Upper Gulf and Pinacate, and they're always struggling for funding, they're always struggling for education, for quality of the experience of people coming through those places. So we pitch in the idea of a visitor center in the Pinacate Biosphere Reserve. And to our surprise, the state government of Sonora, as well as the federal government of Mexico, through the tourism agencies, they were very intrigued by that idea. Because they were asking, well, can you do anything on a biosphere reserve? Can you build something? Can you do something? Of course you can do a lot of things. So if you go to the Pinacates now, there is one of the most astonishing visitor centers in Mexico. And it's an example of how a community-driven and government-driven and private sector participation fructified this idea. So there is this community, this is a visitor center in the Pinacate that was built, it opened last year, and is functioning as an educational center for local and international visitors. It's functioning as an example of alternative energies and alternative materials on how things should be built in the Sonoran Desert. And it created a huge collaboration between CONAMP, which is the National Park Service of Mexico, and the Office of Tourism. 3 years ago, those two organizations weren't talking with each other because they saw us rival to each other. So thanks again to these type of processes, two government institutions are talking with each other and are looking at a way of, okay, how can nature support tourism and tourism support nature? So that's been a very nice balance to work with two different government agencies and bringing also private sector investment into protected areas in Mexico. So we're following that same idea to the Upper Gulf of California Biosphere Reserve, where the state government of Baja California, and I don't know if Francisco mentioned this, they are finalizing. I started the whole process, but they're in the final stages of the feasibility study of a visitor center for the Upper Gulf. We did the idea to combine three things. Several things. The geography of the delta, the marine Upper Gulf, and the combination of ocean, desert, and the highlands of the Sierra San Pedro Martir, and that interrelationship between the Upper Gulf and the delta and the sweet water that the Upper Gulf needs. So for me, it's very interesting that the tourism agencies are very interested in supporting this because they see conservation and management as an asset for their region. It's a balance, I think, that more of that needs to happen. Talking about networking, two government agencies collaborating for the education and conservation of a protected area, as well as private sector investment to protected areas, and we created different job opportunities in the Pinacates as well as in the Upper Gulf for these visitor centers. So for me, that's a nice interaction of different sectors and factors that are in play. So we're hoping it's going in that direction, the sustainability of these centers, because there is a fee that is being charged to enter the park. It's being charged before the visitor center, but now it's staying in the center. Before it goes to Mexico City, and who knows what happened with it. So now it's coming back, those fees, with the idea to keep supporting conservation of those areas.
You sound very optimistic. It's interesting. A lot of people talking about sort of what's happening in this area, talk about the present troubles along the border, which is chasing away visitors. They worry about the trajectory of development and the insults to the environment. But it sounds to me as if you think things are better now than when you first got involved in this. Is that true?
I think if we look at that's a very good question, because let's see if I can come with a very good answer. If you look at the networking of institutions, I think we're better off because we can talk about these issues. So we can say that the creation of Isla La Ruta, Sonoran Institute, CEDO, all these guys have made an impact at the institutional level. Yes, so that's a very positive thinking, and I'm glad the Ezequiel Escurras of the world exist, because there is plenty of them, and I think we have made a change in the government thinking. But if you look at the geography of the place, the actual physical components, there are some things that are changing, like the coastal development, for example. And they're changing the geography of the landscape. In Puerto Peñasco, in San Felipe, in Cabo San Lucas, in Guaymas, which all those are coastal towns that they are experiencing, or they were experiencing, a boom of tourism development. Things are more challenged because we are inviting, or when I say we, is the whole country in Mexico, we are inviting the regular type of investment, the same pattern of development. And Tourism Mexico is very good at attracting that way of development. Same as Spain, same as some other countries in Europe, is just bring the concrete, rise hotels, and the cheapest way to develop the land, make a quick profit, and then the destination will be ruined in 20 years. So we are attracting the trashy tourists with the type of development we're doing. But at the same time, I think there are opportunities. And I think the Sonoran Institute, again, we were trying to implement this strategy of building from the best of the place. So building from the best of the Gulf of California, for example, and we have several forums of that just when I left. And again, that's when I get very fascinated with the private sector, the government, and the NGO community. And National Geographic was a great help for that because everybody knows the yellow square. And everybody pays attention to that, whether you're private, whether you're government, whether you're nonprofit. And so suddenly we were talking with the main developers or investors of the Gulf of California. And they were very interested in listening. But also they were asking very good questions. Okay, Joaquin, all that is great. We understand it, we get it, but does it make money? And that's where we stop as an NGOs or as non-profits, and sometimes we have trouble answering that question, does it make money? And yes, it does, but we don't have the hard numbers in our hand. And there are some other countries that are showing, like Brazil is a good example, that are showing different ways of development, where the government, or Costa Rica in a way, because the government has challenged the private investment. Okay, you're interested in my region, the Gulf of California. And so anyway, we set a forum with investors, with government, and with nonprofits to talk about how should we build the Gulf of California? What's the best, how can we build the best destination in the world with sustainable tourism in mind? And we were in that process where we had big names on development, but also big names on nonprofits, and big names on government. So that's when I left the Sonoran Institute, but I'm still looking into that balancing between. I'm very optimistic, and I think the private sector and the big investors can listen if we are better providers of information and economics. They were very interested. I was developing, or I want to develop still, the investment charter for the Gulf of California. Okay, you want to invest here. Welcome. That's great. That's wonderful. You're interested in the region of Mexico, one of the less developed peninsulas in the world. Well, let's keep it like that. So let's challenge the way development happens here. And at least the subdirector of tourism, she's a very good friend of mine, Alejandro Moreno, he's starting to question the investors like that. And well, what is it that you really want to do? You want to make money in 10 years and then leave, and who knows what happened after that? So this charter, what we were trying to do was to put sustainability criteria in it, economic criteria in it, social development criteria in it, in order to attract investors. Yeah, let's keep them coming. But this is the way we're going to develop it. And I feel comfortable in putting together those forums with investors and tourism and nonprofits because of what happened at the Pinacate Visitor Center, or because of what happened also at the Upper Gulf Biosphere Reserve Visitor Center. Because we have something that conservation and tourism can actually show that it can work. There are some examples like that in the Gulf of California, and that was the first step of the building. That is the first step of building from the best of the Gulf. What is it that is already happening? What are the best practices that are already in place? And what is it that the investors are looking at, these best practices? I can give you an example of Bahía de los Sueños, which is south of La Paz. It has a lot of criticism, but also the owners, which one happened to be, I think she's still the director of the board of directors of the president board of the Sonoran Institute. Naida Jones is her name. She has a huge development here south of La Paz, but it's a great development. It has open access to communities. It has a very low density. It has solar energy, wind energy. Yes, it has a golf course, but the golf course is with desert grasses, blah, 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 recycled water. So, and it's starting to show profits. So that's kind of the balancing acts that we were trying to implement in the Gulf. And yes, there are some changes in the geography, but yes, there is also some changes in the dialogue of the institutions as well as the private sector. And we as a nonprofit, we need to be better equipped to prove that these models can work. And I think we need more information, research in that area. Not in the biology, but in the economics, in the sustainability of the place. Sorry for the long...
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just thinking to myself the extent to which you have pulled together people from very different kind of worlds, from the tourism world, from the commercial world, from the sort of biosphere, administration, government. What kind of characteristics do you think it takes of people to have this ability to move across borders in this way? By this I'm talking about institutional and conceptual borders, which clearly you do.
I think being honest,
okay,
and being open to the dialogue has helped me a lot, and to show that enhancing the character of the place can do a lot of things for people, for the environment, and for institutions. So honesty, transparency, understanding the challenges and opportunities, and not reacting to any or every single thing that is happening. We also need to be focused. Like, for me, it's interesting that every time a big development happens, all the NGOs, oh my God, we need to stop that development. And why do you want to stop it? Why don't you just guide it? Why don't you present different ways of opportunities? Why don't you talk with the investors and tell them that with their money we can do this, this, and that? This is a great opportunity to be doing that. Don't stop the force, just guide it. And so I guess that level of thinking, but also you need to be equipped with the science. With the science of the biophysical elements. Yeah, if you build here, this can be changed. With the socioeconomic science, hey, if we do this type of development, then local opportunities to grow there can be great, and the character of the place can be maintained. And if you and also if you understand government, because one of the biggest challenges for clean energy, for example, is in Mexico, is the Comisión Federal de Electricidad, because there is no law or there is no way to bring sustainable alternative energies to the plate. So we need to reform the legal system. And that's what I learned with the private sector. Joaquin helped us with the government. We want to bring all the clean energy in the world, but we can't, because the Comisión is the one that needs to be doing all that. So I think it takes good listening to the different sectors and try to see the opportunities that listening brings. Because at the end, whether if it is an institution, a private sector, an NGO, we all want quality of life. We all want a good environment. And we all want to make a buck, to make money. So that is a great challenge. Okay, you want a piece of this dollar? Well, this is your piece. You want a piece of this, and then you talk with the community. Okay, you want better jobs? Okay. But in order to give a talk the other day to a series of presidentes municipales and of Baja California and Baja California Sur, and I was telling them, you know, the first presidente municipal that invests in their community, like free internet in their plazas, for example. How walkable is your city? How pedestrian is your city? What is the public transportation that this city requires? What is the open access that the municipality needs? What is the open space in order to grow that we need? The first presidente municipal that pay attention to that, he will be very well received by the community. And it's funny because I go to Yucatan, for example, and the first thing I see in Mérida is that all the plazas have free wireless. And you see all these wonderful young people exchanging emails and talking and drinking coffees and talking about the news in the plaza. So that's such a beautiful scene to have free access of internet, free wireless, and so anyway, somebody's listening and somebody's doing different things. So for me to see the Plaza of Mérida very alive and open and with freedom of information, to call it like that, and then I come to La Paz where, my God, you struggle to have internet connectivity sometimes. So that's what I was telling the Presidentes Municipales. That's kind of how do you change the way of thinking. But also how to build character of your own place. I mean, the architecture that you have, the local culture that you have, the local music, that's what you need to enhance, not to impose other way of thinking to these communities. Enhance it. It's give it life, give it a spin. So I guess is the being able to listen, being able to connect the dots, being able to provide alternatives, and being positive about it, and being able to see the opportunities.
Are there special challenges with trying to reach people who are so economically disadvantaged that they're willing to do anything simply in order to better their economic position? And that's their compelling interest. I'm just interested in whether or not indigenous communities and others who really are hurting economically, that they need a particular kind of message.
I'm so glad you brought that, because that takes me to a different, talking about different projects. And I'm going to talk about the Upper Gulf and Kukapa communities. In the last 2-3 years at the Sonoran Institute, we initiated a community mapping with the Kukapa and the Tohono O'odham. If you think all the maps in the world are done by foreigners, wherever place you are, they're never done by native peoples. They're never done by the oppressed people. So one time, talking with, what's his name? Anyway, his name is going to come. So he was showing us some community mapping exercises that he'd done in Central America. And for me, it was fascinating to see how native peoples look at the environment and what is it that they map. So with that thinking, we went with the Kukapa to map the Upper Gulf, to map the Colorado River Delta from the Kukapa perspective. And my God, where I was surprised with their way of thinking, their way of seeing the landscape. Like Don Onesimo, I don't know if you remember Don Onesimo, Wendy.
Yeah.
He was asking, and he was telling me, Joaquin, this is fascinating. Finally, we're going to show them how we think. And because he was asking me, but how do we map the wind? He says, oh my God, how do we map the wind? Because the wind makes different sounds in different mountains, and it tells us different things. And well, how do we map it? So I reversed the question. I don't know how do we map the wind and the sound. So to begin with that question, with that challenge that Don Onesimo really put us to the thinking. How do we map the sound of the wind on the Kukapa Mountains? Well, obviously the wind was important to the Kukapa, same as the water, and same as the thing that struck me the most, talking about oppressed people. We had a meeting with the elders of the Kukapa in Mexico, and talking about mapping, and to see if they approve the mapping process, if they want to go with it, if they think they can help them in some way. Because they were asking me, well, Joaquin, why do you want a map? No, I don't want a map. I have plenty of maps. The question is if you guys want a map. If you guys want to map your cultural landscape and show it to the world who you are and what you do and what type of things do you want to change or not. So at the end they approved that they want to do the map because of one thing that I think I said, that they were telling me the origins of the Kukapa culture that is right now on this geothermal plant in Mexicali, in Cerro Prieto. So according to several elders, that's where the Kukapa culture began. Because of an explosion, they came out of that explosion, and that is a volcanic area. So then I stopped and I asked them, well, do you remember this geothermal, Wendy?
Yeah.
Which is, so I asked them, so this geothermal thing, all that is Kukapa energy? I asked. So every time I turn the switch in Mexicali or in parts of Yuma or in San Luis Rio Colorado, I can say that I have a little Kukapa energy in my house. And they just look at me like, Joaquin, nobody ever told us that. But yes, that is Kukapa energy. Then again, they don't have electricity. So, from a cultural perspective, from a cultural mapping exercise, I did went with the Comisión Federal de Electricidad, hey guys, you're tapping on the energy of not Iitoi, but what's his name? On the energy of the Kukapa creator. Then again, the Kukapa don't have electricity, they don't have jobs, they don't have anything. So what, at least to do a pride campaign with the Comisión that this is Kukapa energy, to show that the Kukapas are still alive, that they still exist, that they are here, and that thanks to them, thanks to the creator of the Kukapa, you have energy. Very well received by the tourism sector, not well received by the electricity, la Comisión Federal de Electricidad, because they thought, well, we're giving them a lot of power, blah, blah, blah. They are going to stop or want to stop with the electricity. And yeah, the Kukapas are known for being aggressive. So with tourism, we started this small little campaign of pride campaign, if you want to call it, with the Kukapa. So that was one example that the mapping brought to the oppressed, and a different way to look at opportunity. Hey, there is energy here. The Kukapa are providing, at least culturally, this energy. So can we say that Mexicali, because of the Kukapa creator, is one of the most sustainable, energy efficient in Mexico? And how do we tap on that to support the Kukapas? So that's what the cultural mapping process did to us. Same as for the fishing grounds of the Kukapa. Because of the mapping process, yes, the Kukapa are new in fishing in the upper Gulf, but they were river fishermen. They used to fish on the Colorado River. They never fish on the Gulf. But the river died in Mexico. So they were pushed even farther south to fish. So the mapping gave them a tool that, okay, yeah, we are river fishermen, or we were river fishermen. But because of the way we grow, because of the way society grew in the North, in the U.S. and in Mexico, we've been pushed to the ocean to fish. Of course we don't know anything about curubina, because we never fished curubina before. It's been 20 years. Because they criticize the Kukapa, oh, you don't even know about the fish. Well, no, we don't. Because they were river fishermen. But again, they've been pushed to fish in the ocean. So in a way, the mapping exercise is giving them a different tool to show them that they been fishermen, yes, on river, but the river died. So society pushed them farther south, and they're fishing in the ocean. So therefore, by cultural association, I guess, with management, yes, we can do better with fishing curubina with the Kukapa. The last meeting I had with the Kukapa, which was last year when we presented this map to the tribal elders in Yuma, they were very, very pleased with the results. The Kukapa itself wanted to do a walk from sea to the source, following the Colorado River path, and showing that the Kukapa still here. That anyway, at the end, we wanted to map the native Colorado and present different opportunities of energy, different opportunities of water management, different opportunities of development with the native people's perspective of the Colorado River. The Kukapa, on the other hand, they are very difficult society. A lot of drug issues. There is a lot of unemployment. So how do we rescue the true, or how do we rescue, or how do we work with the present Kukapa to have a bigger impact on themselves, but also on the geography of the landscape? this mapping was the first step to do that. So there were several issues presented on the map. There were some economic opportunities presented, like fishing, like clean energy, and also the relationship of institutions on how government should be looking at ways to develop with native peoples. So anyway, that was our little step towards better economic incentives.
Good, that's another story.
Now in a more pragmatic way, we're looking, I'm doing a lot more fisheries work, and that is bringing me back with the Kukapa community. Because Gwynn is one of the most challenged species on a marine environment. From the biological science, but also from the human perspective, because it's fish on a protected area from all kinds of fishermen. Is restricted to fisheries in the core area, core zone. Then again, the Kukapa fish there. So every year they put people in jail, they put people in prison, they take them their boats and their pangas and all that. So I asked Campoy, which I don't know if you interview him, Jose Campoy, just, hey, why every year the same thing? Why don't you just start with the Kukapas and give them some little right to fish in here? Yeah, Joaquin, but if I do that, because in Mexico, we are first, and then we're native people. So we're all equal according to the law in Mexico. So we need to recognize first the cultural components of the native peoples. So anyway, I'm coming back with the Kukapas with some ideas, managers, and they're starting to listen as well as the government. So, and that's the meetings I've been having, Wendy, in terms of CONAM and CONAPESCA are two federal institutions that they don't usually talk with each other. Actually, they are very rival. But I think with the catcher system that we are implementing in the Gulf of California, so we're trying to implement how fisheries should happen in the buffer zone of the Upper Gulf. And so there's very interesting dialogue on MPAs, we call them now marine protected areas. But I am personally very interested on the P. Instead of protected, it should be called productive, marine productivity areas. And at the end, the conservation world, the fisheries world, we want that. We want more productivity. We want to return to the productivity system that we used to have. Well, don't call it protected, call it productive, and that's the challenge. How do we make this area more productive? And it's going to become more productive if we have the science, which we do for the marine components. If we have the incentives of people fishing on a protected area, which we're starting to understand and we're starting to create, and the Kukapa are becoming a very important factor of this. So again, we're starting to create something where I see an opportunity, and conservationists as well as fishermen are very interested on the P, because it's becoming a more productive system. So how do we integrate conservation with productivity in order to have a marine productive area? So those are, for me, that's kind of the new phase of conservation and management of the Upper Gulf. I'm tired, quite frankly, and I'm going to sound very pessimistic here, but everybody that enters the Upper Gulf, it enters into this void or this vacuum, black hole energy that it feels like nothing happens. Is this vacuum thing, is this energy circulating? In all the NGOs in the world are in the Upper Gulf. Locally, regionally, internationally. But it's just circulating, and it's wasting all this talent, all this energy, and we're circulating. So I was telling them 3 weeks ago, we need a different type of energy here. I mean, it's been enough of this woo, woo. We just need to create a different spin here. And I think that spin is going to be Curvina. And I think that spin is going to be the Kukapa. And I think that spin is going to be the productivity areas. Because it's enough of this conservation thing. And everybody's getting tired. Everybody's getting frustrated. So this new spin of productivity areas is bringing hope, is bringing new energy, is bringing some talent to the table and some challenge to the table. We cannot stop fishing. Fishing is going to continue. There are the Kukapas fishing in core areas. It's all this complex human system that for me is fascinating. Okay, how do we prove that conservation actually works? And I'm not sure if we have the science. So those are the things. We need to be truth or honest to our mission. Okay, we designated this biosphere reserve for the conservation and productivity of those 3 species. Well, is it doing better or not? We don't know. And that's the importance of the science. That's the importance of marine biologists. Well, we need to do some monitoring here. Why we don't know those questions? Then again, there's millions, and there are millions of dollars for conservation of marine biology, and society is starting to question that. Where are those millions going? Even Parker Foundation is questioning themselves. Well, is it worth investing this amount of money into conservation efforts of the marine? Last week, all the Parker people got together in La Paz to start to answer that question. And those are very good questions to ask. Is the protected area biosphere concept working in Mexico? At least for those 3 species. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have protected areas. We should have protected areas, but we need to show results. And so anyway, those are very interesting challenges. Society is starting to understand the role of conservation, but it's also starting to ask those hard questions. Is that dollar better invest somewhere else? Or is that dollar should go for conservation? And if it's going for conservation, we need to be very strong and very secure of the management activities that we're presenting. Because society is learning as well. And it's been 25 years, and I will be the first one to present good, solid, even if they are not coming back, but at least to present those results. Hey, this is what has been done. This is what we know. This is the status of the fisheries in the Upper Gulf, and this is where we're going. Why? Because we think this is going in the right trend. Thanks to this information, thanks to this collaboration. We don't have a paper like that. We don't have a strategy like that. And I'm getting excited now to be part of a new plateau for me, a new learning curve in fisheries. That's something I have never done. Then again, we have positioned our organization, Environmental Defense Fund, kind of in a year, kind of the leader of fisheries management in Mexico. And why? Because we bring the economics, we bring the science, and we bring the people together. With good, solid information, transparency, honesty, and we try to solve a problem. let's get it together. Let's see what is it that we have. Let's work it with communities, with government, and with the science, with the fisheries, and see if we can do better here. For me, was interesting, a question of one of our partners, Kobe, Jorge Torre, or Luis Borillon. They were asking me, well, Joaquin, why you? Why Conapesca is paying attention to you guys? And well, it's very simple. I said, because you need Conapesca to solve your problems of conservation. And we bring a solution to Conapesca. Conapesca needs us to solve the problem of fisheries. So it's two different approaches. And the NGO communities need Conapesca to approve or to solve them a problem. And we bring a solution to Conapesca. So now it's interesting, and the reason I didn't answer the phone yesterday, or your phone call 2 days ago, or whatever, is because several NGOs were asking us how to approach Conapesca. And these are NGOs that have been working for 20 years in the Gulf of California. And, Conapesca needs solutions for fisheries. So what type of solutions are you bringing? Or do you just want to show that this fish is important and it needs protection? Because Conapesca is not going to listen to that. It's going to listen what is the management style that this fishery needs to protect it as well as to use it. So anyway, it's been a fascinating trend relationship of people, culture, and conservation, to put it like that. And that's something I get very passionate about it, and how to interact the different dots in order to, again, the quality of life. And quality of life conservation is an important place in it.